In September 1918, Germany transmitted a formal diplomatic protest to the United States, demanding the withdrawal of a single weapon from the Western Front. Not poison gas, not a flamethrower, not a machine gun, a pump-action shotgun. Germany invoked the Hague Convention, called it inhumane, and threatened to execute any American captured carrying one. 26 years later, Marines carried the same weapon, sometimes the same individual guns, pulled from war reserves, into Japanese cave complexes on Peleliu, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa. 6 shells, 54 lead pellets, under 2 seconds, at ranges measured in feet, not yards. The nation that introduced chlorine gas to modern warfare had tried to ban it. The Marine Corps made it doctrine. The Pacific War was not fought at 300 yards. On Guadalcanal, New Britain, and Peleliu, jungle visibility dropped to under 10 yards, the length of a living room. Japanese doctrine was built for this darkness. Spider holes, one-man camouflaged firing positions dug into root systems, invisible until the muzzle flash. Night infiltration through marine perimeters. Bonsai charges with fixed bayonets, timed to close the distance before American firepower could respond. And cave defense. Interconnected tunnel complexes where every mouth was a kill zone and every corner was point blank. The standard Marine arsenal had a problem at these ranges. The M1 Garand was the finest battle rifle in the war at 25 to 500 yards, but inside a cave mouth, it required shouldering and aiming at a target already close enough to stab you. The Thompson submachine gun's .45 ACP round could not reliably penetrate jungle brush. The M1 carbine was light, handy, and widely despised. Colonel William Alexander, chief of the Pacific Warfare Board attached to the 6th Army in the Philippines, filed field reports in late 1944 so damning about the carbine's stopping power and foliage penetration that he ordered the fabrication of 150 shortened M1 rifles, an emergency improvisation by a board whose entire job was evaluating weapons. When the institution responsible for telling the military what works admits the arsenal has a hole, the hole is real. The Marines already had the answer. It had been sitting in war reserves for 25 years, stamped with Winchester proof marks from the last World War. A weapon so effective that the last enemy to face it had tried to have it banned under international law. John Moses Browning designed the Winchester Model 1897, a pump-action, exposed-hammer, 12-gauge shotgun. For the First World War, the Army bolted a perforated steel handguard over the barrel, fitted an adapter for the M1917 bayonet, loaded it with double-aught buckshot, and sent it into the trenches. That was the birth of the trench gun. Everything after was refinement. The weapon's defining feature was not its gauge or its barrel length. It was a design choice Browning never removed. The Model 1897 had no trigger disconnector. Hold the trigger to the rear, pump the action forward, and the gun fired the instant the bolt locked into battery. 6 shells, 5 in the tubular magazine, 1 chambered, in under 2 seconds. 9.33 caliber lead pellets per shell, 54 pellets total. At 10 feet, that pattern had not yet spread beyond the width of a man's chest. A shotgun blast at cave mouth range was not a wound, it was the end of a man. Winchester's hammerless Model 12, built on the same Browning patent, slam-fired identically, entered production in 1912 and eventually accounted for more than 80,000 units delivered to the Marines, Army Air Forces, and Navy during the Second World War.
The Marines used the Model 12 more than the 1897 in the late war island landings because it was newer, less prone to fouling in sand and salt, and available in far greater numbers. In September 1918, Germany had formally protested the shotgun to the United States, transmitted to the Swiss Embassy to Secretary of State Robert Lansing. The protest invoked Article 23E of the Hague Convention, which prohibits arms calculated to cause unnecessary suffering, and threatened to execute any American captured carrying a shotgun or shotgun ammunition. The nation that introduced chlorine gas at Ypres called the shotgun inhumane. What Lansing told Germany in response, and what that reply meant for every Marine who carried a Winchester into a Japanese cave, is a story worth hearing. But first, the weapon needed a war that matched its geometry. The Pacific provided it. On November 6, 1942, Lieutenant Colonel Evans F. Carlson's 2nd Marine Raider Battalion landed at Aola Bay, Guadalcanal, to begin a month-long patrol behind Japanese lines. Carlson's 3-man fire teams carried M1 rifles, Thompsons, and BARs, but supplemented with what contemporary accounts described as a liberal quantity of shotguns and .45 caliber pistols. Many of Carlson's raiders were rural Southerners who had grown up bird hunting with pump guns. Over the next 29 days, the raiders killed 488 Japanese soldiers. They lost 16 killed and 17 wounded. The trench gun had arrived in the Pacific. 1 year later, it found its war. November 20th, 1943. Buckshot Atoll, Tarawa. The 2nd Marine Division hit the beaches of a coral island barely 291 acres in size, smaller than most county fairgrounds, defended by nearly 5,000 Japanese troops behind reinforced concrete bunkers and coconut log seawalls. The 76 hours that followed killed 990 Marines and wounded 2,391 more. Nearly every one of the 4,836 Japanese defenders died. Combat distances on Buckshot ranged from 0 to 50 yards. Marines climbed over low seawalls directly into Japanese fire from positions they could have reached with an outstretched arm. And at Red Beach 3, the man directing the assault was Major Henry P. Jim Crow, commanding officer of 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines, a former enlisted Marine, a national record BAR shooter, and the founder of the Corps' Marksmanship School. Crow was one of the finest rifle marksmen the Marine Corps had ever produced. He went over that seawall carrying a shotgun. The photographs are real. The unlit cigar clenched in his teeth. The Winchester cradled in his arms. Norman Hatch's combat camera crew filmed Crow's sector in color, and that footage became the centerpiece of With the Marines at Tarawa, which won the Academy Award for Best Documentary Short Subject at the 17th Academy Awards in March 1945. The Oscar was presented to the United States Marine Corps. Crow received the Navy Cross. The tactical logic was simple. A rifle requires aiming. A shotgun at 10 feet requires pointing. Tarawa's geometry, low walls, fortified positions at arm's length, Marines dropping in the fire the instant they crested the seawall, made the shotgun not an alternative to a rifle, but the only rational choice. Crow understood the math better than anyone alive. 10 months later, the weapon found the terrain it was born for. Peleliu, September through November 1944. The 1st Marine Division assaulted a limestone ridge the Japanese had spent months fortifying into more than 500 interconnected caves and tunnels. The Umabrogel Pocket, which the Marines called Bloody Nose Ridge. Temperatures exceeded 115 degrees. Limestone coral tore through boots and boondockers.
Inside the caves, absolute darkness, the stench of decomposition, and the metallic echo of a pump action cycling in a space too small to miss. The assault formation that emerged on Peleliu became the Pacific's signature method for reducing fortified positions. A Sherman tank suppressed the cave mouth with its 75mm gun. An M2 flamethrower operator sealed or ignited the opening. A demolitions man followed with satchel charges, and a Marine with a trench gun cleared whatever survived inside. Surviving photographs from the Marine Corps archives show war dog handlers of the 1st Marine Division carrying M1897 trench guns, short, handy weapons for men who could not afford to fumble a long rifle while managing a messenger dog under fire. By 1945, the method had a name. Iwo Jima, February 19th through March 26th, produced more than 26,000 American casualties, including 6,800 dead. Combat photography from the Motoyama Airfield No. 1 Plateau shows Marines advancing with Winchester Model 12 trench guns, alongside Corporal Herschel Woody Williams and his M2 flamethrower. Williams received the Medal of Honor for reducing 7 pillboxes in a single action. The trench gun and the flamethrower were paired like a key and a lock. On Okinawa's Shuri Line, a labyrinth of mutually supporting cave complexes that the 1st and 6th Marine Divisions fought through from April to June, the tactic had been codified. They called it blowtorch and corkscrew, flamethrower to open the mouth, demolitions to collapse the structure, shotgun to kill what came out. The shotgun had graduated from a specialty tool to an institutional answer. And here is what Secretary of State Lansing told Germany in 1918. His reply, preserved as Document 912 of the Foreign Relations of the United States, stated that the shotgun could not be the subject of legitimate or reasonable protest, and warned that the United States would make such reprisals as would best protect the American forces. No American was ever executed for carrying a shotgun, and no analogous protest was ever filed by Japan during the Second World War. The nation that conducted the Bataan Death March and the rape of Nanjing had no standing to invoke the Hague Convention. The weapon Germany tried to ban fought on, through a war worse than the one that inspired the protest. Germany protested the shotgun formally in 1918, after facing it for months on the Western Front. Japan, which faced it far more extensively, across 3 years of island combat from Guadalcanal to Okinawa, never did. No diplomatic note, no propaganda campaign. The Imperial Japanese military had its own vocabulary of fear for American weapons: the flamethrower, naval gunfire, the B-29. The shotgun does not appear in it. The weapon operated below the threshold of strategic concern, a platoon-level killer, not a campaign-level weapon. But at the platoon level, it was absolute. It was also limited. Double-aught buckshot was effective to roughly 25 to 40 yards. Beyond 50, it was useless. On open ground, Saipan's beaches, Okinawa's exposed ridgelines, Marines carried rifles, not shotguns. And in the jungle humidity of the Pacific, the paper shot shells swelled and jammed the action. Marines scavenged stocks of 1918 vintage all-brass buckshot, 27-year-old ammunition from the previous war, because brass cases fed reliably in tropical conditions when nothing else would. The same weapons, sometimes the same individual guns, re-stamped and reissued from Ordnance Department war reserves, went to Korea in 1950 and Vietnam in 1965. The Mossberg 500 and Benelli M4 that Marines carry today are the institutional descendants of what Browning drew up in the 1890s. But what endures is not the lineage.
It is the geometry.
A cave mouth, a hallway of darkness, a man with a pump-action shotgun, and the distance between him and whatever is waiting on the other side. That distance has not changed. Browning designed it in 1897. Marines were still carrying it in 1968. 71 years. Some designs outlived the wars they were built for. This one outlived 3.